Yo, yo, yo. What's good? What's good? It's Stormy B Man, and I am back. Welcoming you to Kung Fu Film Focus for this Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. Today we're featuring a classic from the Golden Harvest Archives. A little film by the name and title, The Association. This film was produced by Golden Harvest Studios and was released in 1975 and stars Angela Mao and Bayong Yu, a gentleman who was a Taekwondo expert and was recruited to star in this film, initially going to be a two-part film. But he backed out of the deal of it being a two-part association for him. And there was some drama behind the scenes regarding this, but we'll talk about it. We'll get to it. But I want to say thank you for joining me today. You know, when I talk about Kung Fu films, I get a little bit excited. I love the genre. And this is one of those that I saw late in the years of my Kung Fu experience. I didn't see it in the early 70s. I actually saw this film during the 80s when films were out on VHS, and I got a hold of it, and I was quite taken with the film because of the drama of the story, as well as the familiar faces who starred in the film. So again, when we talk about Kung Fu movies, there are genres and subgenres within this film category, and a lot of it is outstanding, people. A lot of it is really outstanding, which is why I try my best to recommend certain titles at certain times. So, you know, when we get into talking about this particular film, it's definitely something, if you've seen it before, you'll be familiar with some of the things that I'll touch on. But if you haven't seen it before, this will be a grand introduction for you, as it was for me back in the mid 80s when I finally had a chance to run across this film. So with that being said, welcome everybody. I'm back talking Kung Fu, and this is coming to you live exclusively on my Kung Fu Film channel, and also being simulcast over at Rumble. We're still trying to do that thing where we bring some content to both platforms, because I'm definitely trying to grow the brand over there at Rumble so that we can be able to have liberation, a little something that's familiar to some but not all, and that's okay, because you got some who don't mind. They're content to being in bondage, but not Stormy B Man. I believe in breaking free, getting loose from the damn chains, man, because the chains are what we call restraints. They hold you back, and that ain't what I'm about over here. About elevation. So don't forget to hit that like button as you come into the building. Also share the content. There's plenty of us Fu lovers out there, and this is one to talk about. I mean, The Association is a film that, let me just explain something about this movie. Again, it was made in 1975 by Golden Harvest Studios. The director of this film was a Korean gentleman by the name of Chang Chang-wha. Chang Chang-wha was very famous in the early 70s for dabbling in Kung Fu films. He wrote a couple of movies and he produced a few films, but he definitely brought something new to the genre. One of the films that he was most noted for was Shaw Brothers' King Boxer from 1972, starring Lo Lei. Now, if you remember King Boxer, aka Five Fingers of Death, this was a film that kind of introduced kung fu movies internationally to American audiences. And it was really a film that I remember it back from my childhood witnessing King Boxer. It was an introduction to super-feated, death-defying leaps and blows by these slight Chinese men doing what we would learn to be kung fu, the art of combat, unarmed, hand to hand, foot to hand, whatever. But it was kind of new in the early 70s. You see, now, for anyone born in the past, inside the past 40 years, kung fu, karate, judo, martial arts in general has been a part of your life experience. That's all you've known. But if you think back to the early 70s, 1972 in particular, this was all new. For American audiences, there was the experience of having watched a couple of films where you might have seen judo on display. James Bond had issues where he would fight people and use a little bit of karate and judo chops and things like that, throws. And then, of course, if you go back into the 60s, you had Bruce Lee, who appeared on the Green Hornet, where he had introduced Gung Fu. That's how he pronounced it, with a G. And Kato performed that art, saving the Green Hornet's rear end time and again. So it was one of those things that audiences found to be new, along with all sorts of Chinese culture and commerce that was a part of Nixon and Mao Zedong opening up the what are they called, trade between the two nations of China and America. So kung fu movies were a part of that. And Five Fingers of Death was one that really took off. And this man, Chang Cheh-Wah, was the director, and I actually preferred his films over Lo Wei films. Lo Wei was a Golden Harvest director who was imported over from Shaw Brothers. He had done some Shaw action films and swordplay wuxia films for Shaw's. And when his contract ran out and Raymond Chow had left the Shaw Brothers, he was originally Run Run Shaw's right-hand man until Mona Fong, his mistress, came along. And so Raymond jumped ship, opened up his own studio, Golden Harvest. Now, this gentleman here, Chang Cheh-Wah, his films were noted for camera angles, the sound effects that he chose to be incorporated in his films. Zoom lens options as far as dolly cam tracks, and definitely the camera angles, especially associated with choreography. He had a knack for being able to display action in these type of movies, and I believe he was really versed in watching a lot of the Japanese cinema. Japanese, with their Chambara films with swordsplay, ronins and samurais, and even some of their other types of action fare, their spy films and things like that. Camera angles and the dynamics of how the camera worked and evolved within the action. This gentleman brought a lot of that to Hong Kong cinema, and he doesn't get talked about enough. You always hear about people like Chong Che, Lo Wei, and who's the other one? Choi Yuen and others. But he isn't spoken of enough, and he should be, because he was quite innovative with what he brought to the film industry. He had followed up King Boxer with films like The Devil's Treasure, that was Golden Harvest also, The Skyhawk, which came in 74, that featured Kwon-tak King, who was noted as Wong Fei-hung for over 100 films. And even in his later age, he was still brought back to play Skyhawk, aka Wong Fei-hung, in a 1974 Golden Harvest feature. And then came his directorial with The Association, the film we're talking about today. What I loved about The Association, it was released in June of 1975 and played for approximately 1 week, raking in 546 million. I'm sorry, 546,000 at the box office. And the film was action choreographed by Sammo Hung and Wang In-sik. Wang In-sik was a gentleman that played in these films in the early 70s, typically as a Japanese or Korean bad guy. Sammo, let me get a chance to get his image up here, because I've changed up how I'll do these productions. I got my little Stormy cell up there, and I've changed it to where my images will be inside the cell. It's a little more convenient to do it that way. Here's an image of Sammo Hung from the early 70s. This image is actually from, I believe, maybe Warriors 2 or Shaolin Plot, one of those films. But anyway, that's Sammo, a heavyset gentleman who was a stuntman that started out with Shaw Brothers Studios, and he jumped ship and moved over to Golden Harvest himself. Now, Sammo was Golden Harvest's in-house choreographer too. He would go literally and learn specific fighting styles and forms, and come back and teach them to the actors and actresses on the set or at the studio. He was noted for doing this. He, Angela Mao, Carter Wong, Chong Yi, and a few others who starred in the early Golden Harvest films, Maria Yi, they would all go and study with Sammo. Like he was noted to go to Korea to study Hapkido from Chi Hong Jae, Wang, who is Wang In-sik's Sifu, and he did this a lot. He would go to different places to learn the arts, so he could produce authentic skill sets on the sets of the film. And that was great that he would do that. So let me see, hold on a second. Just double checking some things here on the stream. Let's see here. Output. My output. Yeah, okay. My output is okay. Yeah. So, but Wang In-sik, who also plays one of the bad guys in this film, this is an image of Wang In-sik. He was noted in Golden Harvest for being a very good character actor from Korea. We got one person out there. We got Columbia out there saying salute. Salute to you, Columbia. Hadn't seen you before, but I appreciate you stopping in. Smash that like button as you come into the building. We have a few more people out there now checking us out, which is okay. But yeah, the film, the association is a little bit different from some of the early outings for Golden Harvest Studios. They made this film. It's a period piece, but what's really cool is it's it's like a crime drama. Byung Woo, who is the lead in this film, he's a Korean martial artist that they recruited to play in the lead role in here. And this turned out to be his only kung fu film. He was born in 1935, January of 1935, and he taught martial arts, Taekwondo, here in America. But Golden Harvest, they sought him out, brought him to Hong Kong, and his martial arts is not very bad. In fact, he looks pretty much a lot like other actors at that time. Carter Wong, who has a small role in this film, but he ran into a problem when they recruited him to do this film. It was originally going to be a 2-part film, and they told him the film was going to be about one thing, and they kind of changed it up during the production. What he got upset about was there was a tonal change of the film. The character that he plays is like a policeman, okay? And when he started out, when they started filming the movie, it was supposed to be, like I said, a 2-part crime epic. And there were storyline subplots about women being a part of a prostitution ring, and there was grape and abort context regarding this. And as a lead officer, he was investigating some things going on. Now, the film is known for its nudity, okay? That's one thing I want to get right off the bat there to tell people honestly. If you watch Kung Fu films, this film has a great deal of nudity and lewd acts, okay? Which was kind of weird. Golden Harvest kind of went for it. At that time, only the Japanese films were as explicit as what we managed to see here. And I remember watching this, like I said, I first saw it in the 80s on VHS. And I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to see that. You know what I mean? And there were some things transpiring on film that and let's just say the Chinese, when they were doing their films in Hong Kong, they went for a lot of realism. So I could imagine that some of the actors and actresses were uncomfortable with certain things that got shot on film. Though it wasn't gratuitous nudity, we never see the male parts, but we see female, and it's there. It's just, I just want to put it out there. So I'm not trying to push people to watch this movie and then you watch it and you end up saying, man, Stormy, that film was kind of risque. Yeah, it is. That's why I'm telling you as I'm talking about it, because it's definitely a film that's on the risque side. So Byung Yu, he didn't like that. And he said that he was the main character of the film, being the police officer investigating these criminal fronts, and he felt like it was an overly heavy dose of exploitation and female nudity. He said that this was his first and last screen appearance, and he wasn't comfortable with the sleazy elements of the production, and he would buy out what was planned to be the first part, preventing it from being released. So the association film is the second part, actually, to what was originally a bigger tale patched together so that it runs coherently as possible. This is according to a review of the film that I'm reading from, because I wanted to explain it to you in the terms of how things went down. Angela Mao is playing a strong character in the film. Apparently, she has a dual role here, where she was playing a woman who was a martial artist, who was a good friend and possibly like a companion to Bayong Yu's character. And she, in the film, and they have this relationship, but she comes home one day where her dad, who was ill, has been found murdered, and the murderer is still in the house, because not only did he delete her dad, but he deleted the mom too, but not before SAing the mom. Yeah, the dad was ill, and they were trying to squeeze him for profits and everything, but because due to his illness he was bedridden, he couldn't do much of anything. So the gentleman that came to the house on behalf of the bad guy, the lead of the film, who we'll get to in a moment, he said, well, the boss wants it like this or whatever. He was like, well, let's make a deal. And so he decided to tell the old man, hey, if you let me spend some time with your wife, who's quite beautiful, we could work something out. And dude was like, how dare you, insult me? So the old man tried to fight him. They got into it, and he ended up dying because he was fragile and ill of health to begin with. And Angela comes in just as the villain finished off her mom. So when she witnessed this, she had a fit of rage, and she attacked him, and she offed him. Well, Bayong Yu's character, like I said, he was an inspector, a chief inspector, and that's his girlfriend or a good friend. Of course, he had to arrest her. And he didn't want to, but I guess according to the law of their land, because she committed murder herself, they brought her before a firing squad, and so he dedicated trying to figure out what happened, and he was investigating this ring that involved prostitution, drugs, and other nefarious stuff, and he was out there trying to, figure things out. Now, also a part of all of this, as I change up a little bit of something here, the villainous bad guy who was running stuff, played by Chow Hung. Chow Hung, you remember him from a number of films in the early 70s, Golden Harvest and Shaw Brothers films. He was the Japanese baddie in Five Fingers of Death. He was running things into the ground. And so Bayong Yu's character was trying to bring him to justice. And he was accompanied by a couple of stealth bodyguards played by Wang In-sik and also Sammo Hung. I mean, no, Sammo Hung played Bayang Yu's assistant detective. But there was the guy, Wilson Tong, whom I was trying to say. Wilson Tong played one of Chow Hung's side ministers of evil, the bad guys. The fight scenes in the movie, choreographed by Sammo and Wang In-sik, are very strong. But it's not overly Hong Kong movie action from that era and period. The fight scenes are appropriate for the conflict that's taking place on film. That's one of the things that I liked about it. But there are some hilarious lines of dialogue from this movie, man. There are some. I remember the first time seeing it, I had to rewind it for some of the funny things that were being said, translated into English. Because my first view of it was seeing the English dub of the film. But the English dub is hilarious. For the guy that was SAing Angela's mom, when he was getting ready to assault her, and she was like, "Get away from me!" And he was like, "Come on, let's have a little fun." And he was approaching her, and she slapped him. And he took the slap, and he was like, "Oh!" And he looked at her, he was like, "Oh, feels good." It was like he was crazy. He was like, "It feels good," And then they show him doing his thing to her, which was kind of weird. And then he strangled her. So, but that's why Angela, she came in as he was finishing, and she took him out. But the bad guys, Wilson Tong and Wang In-sik, there's a funny exchange between Bayang Yu and Wang In-sik, because Wang is playing the chief baddie of Chow Hung, and they come across each other's path, and they exchange dialogue. And so Wang is like, "You know who we are?" And Bayang Yu is like, "You guys are some bastards that are doing bad stuff. We're going to be arrested, this and that." And he was like, "Do you know who that man is in that car?" And before Bayang Yu could say, "I don't care," he was like, "I don't," and dude hit him in the face like, you have to see the movie to see what I'm talking about. It's funny, man, because at the time in the 70s, this kind of stuff in a kung fu movie, it was hilarious. But and it was meant to be hilarious. It was like that was ways that they sprinkled the humor in there. And there's a great line of dialogue at the end of the movie when Chow Hung is getting ready to be taken down by the cops and everybody. And as they surround his home or his headquarters, his bad guys are like, "Boss, the cops are outside and they're armed and everything. What do we do?" Dude was like, "It's every man for himself now." You have to see the movie to see why I'm laughing. I highly recommend The Association, man. It's a great kung fu film that didn't get a lot of play, didn't get a lot of hype, but it was awesome, man. It was awesome. So to check this film out and to enjoy it, for what it's worth, is like it's a treat. It's a treat, man. But Bayang Yu, the film opening credits show him doing a kata, which it reminded me of many years later, Jackie Chan in the opening segment of The Big Brawl was doing the kata. they shot him doing a kata, and then later Brandon Lee, when he was that Rapid Fire, I think they opened that with him doing a kata. I think they really wanted Bruce Lee to do something like that, and it probably would have happened in one of his upcoming films, because he had like about 3 or 4 films slated when he finished Enter the Dragon, but he didn't live to do any of those projects. But they had talked about him filming him doing a kata, because though Bruce was not a proponent of using the classical martial arts, he knew how to do a lot of the movements associated with classical martial arts, like the crane forms and the hungar forms and things of that nature. There's actually video of him out there doing a lot of that stuff, and especially like in the 60s when he came to America, because he understood showmanship, and those flowery movements from classic martial arts could tantalize people and make them fascinated at the movements and stuff, even though he felt like some of that was like swimming on dry land. It didn't mean anything, but it looked good if you knew how to execute it. And that's how he caught a lot of students' attention during the 60s himself. Bruce Lee did. So yeah, but this film was awesome, man. There's also another actress in the film who was very popular at the time, and that's Tanny Tierney. She is an actress that played in a lot of films that showed her as sometimes a love interest, sometimes she was a femme fatale. She was the type of woman who was like leading men on and stuff. She starred in over 113 films in Hong Kong. She was born in 1948, and you could basically say she was the lead actress in this film, not Angela Mao, but her character. And she had a lot more of celebrity at the time that the film was made, but would go on to be surpassed by the likes of Angela. She was not a fighter on film. Excuse me, but she was a strong actress, and had what we would call Hollywood looks at the time that she starred in this film for Golden Harvest. She's been in so many martial art films, like to name some of the films: The 80 Mortals, The Master Sword. What else was she in? She was in The Desperate Chase. Trying to think of some other films that she was in. Let me pull her filmography up. She was also in The Brutal Boxer. Trying to think. Of course, The Association. She's also in Cleopatra Jones and the Casino of Gold. That was her crossover film with Shaw Brothers and what was it, Warner Brothers? I think. She was in A Queen's Ransom, The Battle Wizard. She was in a lot of films, and like I said, she was a character actress. And in this film, there was a suggested sexy scene between her and Byung Yu, but it just involved her standing in front of a light with a robe on where he could see through her legs. It was like kind of weird, but at the same time, like I said, a little risque for early 70s martial art films. And they were into this stuff, man. I would imagine that there's so much that they did with the Hong Kong films, because I'm primarily into the kung fu aspect, maybe some of the action films. Didn't really care for the comedies, but that doesn't mean they weren't good. It just wasn't my cup of tea. But she's an actress that, like I said, 113 films. She made her mark in the Hong Kong film industry and is well respected as a result. Angela Miles, surprisingly, had only starred in 45 films. It may come across that she was even in more than that, but only 45 films under her legacy of starring in Hong Kong productions. So, and she never played any seductress or anything like that. Always with chastity did she play her roles. There are 3 movies that were made back to back where she played Angela. She played in Stoner, The Tournament, and The Association. 3 Golden Harvest productions. And then she would go on to be in some independent films. But yeah, it was quite interesting, the Hong Kong industry at this early time. The movies that they made and everything. That's why if you could get your hand on some of their old films, it's great to check them out. You know what I mean? Association is one of the good ones too. It's a very good film. So if anybody that's out there listening right now presently and haven't had a chance to enjoy it, it's been remastered too by either 88 Films or Shout Factory, one of them, because I seen it in a box set of films. But yeah, it's a very cool film, The Association. I see Snoopy Mac over there on the Rumble app. Appreciate you, Snoopy Mac, for joining in over there. Where's my man Shogun 76, the real Shogun of Harlem? I would like to get him out here. He likes to talk kung fu films, and we got a doozy of one right here. This film, for any of you guys that are out there listening, have you guys seen The Association? Probably not. But if you have, I'm sure you were entertained by it. I'm almost positive you were entertained by this movie. Yeah. So yeah. Well, yeah, Bayong Yu, he played in this one movie, and then that was it for him. I guess he had said, I ain't feeling the Tinseltown of movie making. And that's pretty cool. I say that because when Bruce Lee passed away, studio executives were looking for real-life martial artists to cast in starring roles, because Bruce Lee was a real martial artist, and he had a right combination of physical ability, the look of a person that you want in front of a camera, and also his martial prowess. And they were looking for someone else to fill that void, because they didn't get to milk it all from Lee as an adult. They got him as a child, but not as an adult. So he wasn't around long enough, just a couple of years, but he wasn't around long enough for them to really bring everything out of him or run him into the ground. So they sought out other people, and Bayong Yu is just another Korean, along with the likes of John Liu and Don Wang Tao, guys like that, Tan Tao Lang. They would go to America and get these guys to star in these films. So You know, it's unfortunate, but that's the way it worked out. Yeah. But yeah, I thought I would come out and talk about this movie with you guys today, man, because you know what? It's a pretty darn good film, huh? The Association. Pretty darn good film. Columbia is asking, who did better acrobatics, Wang Tao or Li Min? Listen, Wang Tao didn't do uh, acrobatics. He is also a Taekwondo man from the U.S. that they hired. Golden Harvest Studios hired him right after the death of Bruce Lee because they had a talent search out for actors to replace Lee and put him in roles. I think his first starring role was Slaughter in San Francisco with Chuck Norris. And if you watch that film, you could tell that was like his first time in front of the cameras. But he's got a real jerky reaction to how he fights in that film. Everything is like he's got a little jerk before he makes a move, whether it's a punch or a kick. He's got this little gait in what he's doing. And that later went away with more experience on fighting on film. But he was not an acrobatic man. Now, Lee Min was a very athletic guy, and he helped fill the gap for when Jackie Chan started off doing what he was doing for some of the Taiwan films and independent film markets. He could rival Jackie a little bit with some of his athleticism in order to do acrobatics. He wasn't as smooth as Jackie, but he could still do the work. He even resorted to having a Jackie-like hairstyle. If you remember Jackie in films like Drunken Master or what was his other film? Fearless Hyena. If you remember him in those films, how Jackie wore his hair, Lee Min started wearing his hair like that. Because Lee Min comes from the late 60s and early 70s. He started out as a stuntman and a background player, and then he elevated into being a co-star and even helping with action choreography. But by the mid-70s to late 70s, he moved right into being another guy that they could have to rival what Jackie was doing with films like The Seven Grandmasters and Seven Commandments of Kung Fu. Lee Min, he brought something to the screen with his like, he said, oh, so they must have used doubles for him because little man Lee Man and Wang Tao did a movie together called Shaolin Iron Claws. Yeah, that was when it came to acrobatics, Wang Tao was always doubled, always. Him and John Liu. Now, as far as the fighting, they could do the fighting all day long. And John Liu, with his flexible legs and stuff, what he could do with his legs could not be repeated by stuntmen. It was an interesting dynamic. And if you watch the films, even though Taekwondo is a martial art which uses a lot of leg action and activity, Don Wong, when he played in the film cinematically, even though he was a Taekwondo guy, they usually had him fighting fist styles. wasn't using Taekwondo technique. So he's supposed to be a better kicker than he is a puncher, right? So they had him using his fist styles. Yeah. Sounding a little choppy there. Sounding like it's chopping. But yeah. But yeah, keep your eye out for the Lee Men films there, Columbia, because he was pretty prolific, you know, during the late 70s. Now it just cleared up the choppiness. He says the 7 Grand Masters is one of the best ever. Yeah. 7 Grand Masters is a favorite of mine. Definitely. Yep. Yeah, so, but yeah, I just thought I'd come out here and do a special stream today, man. You know, 7 Grand Masters. That's a good movie. I did a stream on them once before. I'm not sure what my next one will be, but I'll tell you guys as I look around at titles for you to watch. Check out The Duel of the Seven Tigers. That's a film I reviewed recently. Duel of the Seven Tigers with Philip Coffey, Han Yen-kit, Cliff Locke, a few of them. So, you know, check that out. That's a recommendation. Yeah. Columbia is asking, you see Heroes of the East with Gordon Liu? Listen, man, let me tell you something. There's more of what I haven't seen. More of what I have seen than haven't seen there, Columbia. Listen, Stormy B. Man is not short on Kung Fu film knowledge and having witnessed, okay? So I know I told you earlier in this stream, I said I hadn't seen you before, and I appreciate you coming in. But I've done over 100 of these shows here. Yeah. So, and some of the films, I talk about them to an extent that it wows people with the information that I'm able to drop. So yes, I've seen that in pretty much everything that Gordon Liu has been in. So, yeah. It's actually fun talking Kung Fu, man. It's really fun. See what we got here. Let's see here. Looks like my stuff is frozen in the backdrop. He says, I watch you and Drew. I just don't comment much. Okay, that's okay. You know, I'm not tripping on it. I'm just saying, I pay attention to who does write in the chat. Now, you might be writing in over at Drew's chat, which I don't watch his chat like that. I watch my chat because I like to be engaged with my audience and everything. So if you're out there and, you're writing or whatever, I acknowledge you, man. I acknowledge you. I don't just be like, yeah. Yeah, buddy. So these kung fu joints be popular, man. I get so many views on them. It's like ridiculous. That's why I had to make it a full channel, because I've seen, the support out there for it. And this is my way of acknowledging the support. But I'm going to get ready to get on out of here, you guys. I hope that you all enjoy your day. It's Stormy's birthday, so I'm going to get me something to eat and chill out and watch me a kung fu flick. But I appreciate everybody that came out and supported me. If you're catching the show late, thank you for tuning in. And we'll be back soon with another Kung Fu Film Focus. It's what we do around these parts. And just know that we give it to you the raw. There's always some good Kung Fu to talk, huh? Yeah. So, peace to everybody out there. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. We'll catch you on the next one.